All right, what is up, guys? I'm Evan, and today we're going to be talking about something really exciting, and that is building universal applications. And that is an app that you write once and you can run everywhere. So this project, this talk, just like any great project, starts with the question of, do you build an app or a website? And the reason you need to choose is because the stack is totally different. So if you want to build an app, you can use one of these great solutions like React Native. And then over here to build a website, you've got there's lots of ways to build websites. And what if you could build both, though? What if your company had the budget or the bandwidth, or what if you just had the time to make both? What would that look like? So if we look at major companies like Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, we kind of see that it would just look basically identical across web and native. Well, this is the mobile web, right? And it's sharing a lot of the same components, a lot of the same elements, and everything basically just looks alike. So going back to that list that I showed you earlier, one of these solutions can be used to create truly universal apps today, and that is React Native. So let's talk about React. React is awesome. It's got a great community. It's got lots of great features, an incredible team. It's got, hooks. And React is, the way React kind of works is when you say you're building a React website, you're building a website with React DOM. Now, React has this XML-style language called JSX, and I promise this will get more complicated. And it looks like HTML, but it's not actually HTML. But you write things like div and image and p. And then React Native came along, and it enabled you to write iOS apps using React. So you could use all those same great features, that great community, and create iOS apps with it. But instead of going for the platform-specific names like div and image and p, they opted to use platform-agnostic names like view and image and text. And because of this, a guy who was working at Facebook, Christoph Majira, was able to create React Android, which enabled you to build Android apps with React. And because they were using this primitive system, things like view and image and text, they were able to essentially just use all the same code across platform. So when I say primitive, what I mean is, like, say you wanted to render text to a screen, right? You got any text, any screen, and if that screen is a browser, you would wrap it in something like a span RP or anything really. And if it was an iOS app, you would use a UI label from UIKit, and if it was an Android app, you would use a text view from the Android SDK, right? But a primitive is something like a text element, where you write it once, and then based off where you're rendering it, it will bind to the correct native element. And doing this for web is something that Nicholas Gallagher worked on solving when he created the library React Native for Web at Twitter to create the Twitter Lite PWA, which is perhaps one of the greatest PWAs of all time. And the reason I give this very long-winded explanation is because the name React Native for Web is not great. It kind of insinuates that you took React, made that work on native, and then made that work back on web, which is like very redundant, but that's not what it actually does. What it really does is it takes and uses that same primitive system. So you could use things like view and image and text, and then they would render to the correct element. So if it was a view, it'd be like a div, and image, but you could use the same code everywhere. And this is a great idea. A lot of people are really into it. All these big companies use it for their PWAs and desktop PWAs, supplementary websites, and Twitter uses it for their actual website, which is like the 6th biggest website in the world. So everyone must be using this, right? It's so cool. Not right. It's actually far less than right. So I assumed that, like, maybe people just don't build websites. Maybe they just mostly build native apps. Then I added React DOM and realized it was like 16 times wrong. People really build websites all the time. So here's the part where I just read directly what's on the screen, and that is, why isn't everyone using it, right? If it's a proven technology, and if you use it to build your website and your native app, then you're getting that co-operability across platforms, and there's just like so many benefits to using it. And to understand why people don't use it, I think we should understand like the problems with React Native as a whole, or problems. So all these are iOS 13 apps, right? And they're all very complicated, and they all kind of share a common trait, and that is that you can't really build any of these with React Native on its own, because React Native doesn't provide things like maps and gestures, navigations, videos, which are all very critical elements to a lot of very important apps. So it requires a lot of community libraries. So like this is the same case with React DOM. Only difference is with React Native, it's much harder to make native libraries because you need to know iOS and Android and React DOM's JavaScript alone. So when people want to build production-ready applications with React Native, usually what they do is use a framework called Expo. Now, I love Expo. If I was to describe it as like the most reasonably possible for those of you who don't know, Expo is probably, I call it like the greatest thing ever created, probably. I work at Expo, so yeah. So Expo provides a few things to make development really easy. The first is the universal SDK. This is things like the video, the maps, gestures, navigation, all those which run wherever Expo runs. So if you write your app once with that SDK, then it will run anywhere in platforms that are in the future, it will run there as well. The next is services like the Expo client, which is kind of like a native browser for your applications. I like to think of this one as like, imagine if when you're building a website, you downloaded Chrome every time you updated the website and you had to set it up. Expo client is kind of like that, like or it's not like that, right? It's like, it's kind of like that. So with the Expo client, you just download it once, and then you can use it across multiple apps that you're working on, and you don't have to ever download native dependencies back onto your device. You just update the JavaScript. And then things like Snack, which we'll get into here in a second. And then there's a bunch of dev tools which cut out all the needless complexity involved and build services, things like Turtle, which will build your Xcode build in the cloud. So if you have a Windows computer, now you can do iOS development, which is really awesome. And now we're going to get to my favorite part, is the live demo. Yeah, this really spoke to me, I thought. I'll just still demo stuff too. All right, here we go. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off mirroring real quick, or turn on mirroring. And I can demo some stuff for you. So first, let's just make a native Expo project, right? We can do that with Expo and init. First, we need to probably select this keyboard. Expo init, right? And then we can just put in whatever name. We select the template, B26. I'm really good with naming. And then it will just install. So I don't know if you guys have ever seen a cooking show, but in cooking shows, you just have all the steps prepared ahead of time. So that's what I do. So here's what will happen after it's done initializing, unless you guys just want to watch the yarn packages installed. So if we want to start up an Expo project, we just run expo start. And what this is going to do is it's going to fire up something called the Metro Bundler, which is Facebook's proprietary bundler. And I have my own feelings about that. So we're going to hit the I key, and then that's going to install the Expo client and then open the project in Expo. So here we go. We're running the project now on the simulator. We can run it on a device as well. Just going to open up the code for this really quickly. And I can make a bunch of really profound changes to this code and watch it update live like that, right? So it's pretty cool. You have a native app running right there, right now. But you guys have probably all seen React Native, or maybe you have, so it's okay. Let's do more with this, though. So what if we wanted to run this in the browser? Well, in the past, you had to install Webpack, Webpack CLI, Webpack Dev Server, React Native for Web, React DOM, set up a Webpack config, change your entry points and all that. Now what you can do is you can just kind of hit the W key, and then it will fire up Webpack, and it will open it in the browser. So yeah, like that. And so now we've got our project sharing the code in the browser and natively on iOS. And of course, this will run on Android as well, but I don't want to bring my computer to a halt, so I'm not going to open the simulator. And we can just make more changes. I guess I can make like real changes now. That's where we're at. And there we go. It'll like live update. It's very impressive. Okay, so I promised on Twitter that I would show something new off. So this has all been out for a few months, and I've got something new to show you guys. So this is all well and good, but what if you wanted to run this as an OS X, a Linux, and a Windows app? You could do that with a package called Electron. And before I go any further, I'll say that we are working on a proper native version of desktop support for Expo. But I figured, why not? We'll try Electron. So you could do both. So I'll show you how to use Electron with this stack. It's dead simple. It's crazy easy. So let's go over here, and we would just install the package with like yarn add at expo/electron adapter. And this is going to install all the tools required to run it. It's kind of an out-of-tree platform, so to speak, because we don't want to install like Electron into everyone's app. There we go. It's installed. Now I can run yarn expo electron. I'll clear that out real quick. And what this is going to do is it's going to add all the, like ignore generated packages to the git ignore. It's going to install the missing dependencies. In this case, that's Electron. And I think sometimes there might be like a Webpack dependency. And now it is ready to go. So if I run yarn expo electron start, it's going to fire up a new Webpack config for the main process. So you do have hot reloading on both of the Electron processes when you use it with Expo. And just like that, now we have a desktop app, and it is supporting 6 platforms with the same code base. It's crazy stuff. All right, so I'm gonna move all these over, and I'm just gonna flex on how cool it is to update all these at the same time. If I can fit it on. No, I don't want to move you. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3 right there, and plenty of room to code in. So we can just make a change there, and then 1, 2, 3, we've updated the app, and we can work on 3 various apps all at the exact same time. So let's go ahead. We can add some native dependencies like a linear gradient, and then I can add like colors. Let's go like blue and plum. There we go. So that's 6 platforms that you can do with the same code base. It's wild stuff. But it does get even easier than this. So this is all doing it locally. This is doing it with the CLI. This is kind of like how you would do it when you're actually developing an app. But if you're just experimenting with it, or if you're playing around, if you're making examples, you would do something even easier. You would use a software called Snack. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Snack. If you're familiar with something like oh, let me beef that font up, like CodePen or Code Sandbox or JS Fiddle, this is like that. But it's kind of like taking it to the next level, because not only can you build websites with it, but you can also build native apps directly in the browser. So just by hitting the URL snack.expo.io, you've created a native app that you can just run, and you have a link to it that you can share with people, and they can open it on the client as well. So let me open it in the simulator. Simulators are so fun to use. So right here, anxious orange. That's kind of me. And it's going to synchronize that code, and then just here from the browser, without installing anything, without adding any overhead to my device, you can just update the code live on your native device and in the web browser. So that's pretty cool. And it's got dark mode, so like really cool. I'm going to show you guys one that I really like, actually. So this is just like a favorite. And this one, essentially what this is it's like the chat bubbles animation from Facebook Messenger. So if I grab this, I can animate it around. You see, so this is running in an editor in an iframe while I'm presenting with a simulator open and 3 bundlers. I should actually stop those now that I think about it. And then I can run it on both of these. But these are also just web gestures that I'm showing off right now. So buttery smooth, using that same API everywhere. So even for complex primitives, like I showed you how this works with text across platforms, but even with like pan gestures and like spring animations, it works the same across platforms. So it's very cool. I'm going to say that a few more times. Now, everything I've shown you so far is just like hello world stuff, right? It's just bootstrapping, it's text, you know. So like, what does this look like when you're actually like building something real with it, like an actual website? And the answer is, I've got another demo I can show you. So This is something called Expogram. This is like a clone of Instagram that I built a long time ago, but I built it just for iOS and Android. After adding or like creating Expo Web, I was able to then just run this in the browser. You see it's got the media queries from when I ran it on iPad, so if I close it, it's like doing all the media query things. And then I can, it's pretty good. It's got like a lot of, views and images on it. We can also open it in the simulator like this. Oh, it's already open. It's like I planned this. And then I can like do gestures, so I can pinch and move the image around. Pretend you didn't see that just now. So let me just I can pinch and scale, move the image, reset it, stuff like that. And that's all okay. My favorite screen though is when you open up the camera. So the camera is really cool for a couple of reasons. The first one is it's basically just an exact clone of Instagram. So when you hit it, you have permission dialogue similar to the app, which is very kind of unheard of for a website. Usually websites just, when you hit a page, they're like, we need your camera. So with this, you have like these much cleaner API interactions for the user. So I'm gonna go ahead and enable camera. I'll enable the microphone. I will grab my water. And just like that, now we're running a camera in the browser as well. So we can also animate around. Whoa. Gonna just click through here. As you can see, we've got like crazy animations jumping up. This one's one of my favorite screens because now not only is it running a live camera feed in the browser, but now it has a native blur view running on top of it. And this isn't a special browser. This is just Chrome, like the cookie cutter Chrome. You could open this up, expogram.netlify.com, try it yourself. It's streaming in audio data from the iTunes API. I won't play any of it because I don't want to halt the YouTube stream. But then you could like come over here, type something, Berlin, hey, and then maybe like change the gradient around, change the font around. This is more impressive on native than it is in the browser, but you can change fonts. And then you can save the image, so it's using like a kind of a screenshot where it like recreates the DOM, saves that as an image, and then I can like save it like that. And if you're doing this natively, that will save it just to the native photo gallery. And open up the photo, and as you can see, it saved the photo here locally to my actual file system. So it's a lot of complex functionality that, again, I didn't have to do any of this. It all just happened by default. If we open this up in a not incognito browser, you'll see that right over here we have access to installing it as a desktop PWA. One second. Desktop PWAs are so good at installing. So we get the prompt. Again, this is not a feature I added. This just comes with Expo for Web. And that's about all the demos I have for you. So we're going to get back to the presentation and I'm going to talk very quickly about how this all works. Somehow I closed Keynote. The demo worked perfectly fine, then Keynote failed. Okay. Let's jump to, I also have videos of all that stuff just in case the demo fails. So yeah, we can skip over all that, come right into here. So we can talk about how the PWAs work with whatever time I have left. PWAs are awesome. In fact, I'm actually just going to mirror the screen because I need to see the notes for this one. I got to read my script about how PWAs are awesome. Okay, so I think in the past there have been a lot of websites or services for building websites that are like, oh, you get a PWA for free. But it's a lot different when you actually build the native app and run it as a PWA because there's a lot of functionality that you can just omit. Whereas if you come from a website, you can't really just automatically add that functionality back. And there's a lot of functionality that people come to expect now, like offline support and splash screens, app icons, theming, safe area, navigation, sharing, tons of stuff, right? All this is automatic, and one of my favorite features, to be honest, is just like the full screen with the safe area view when you have a PWA. And the safe area view, if you don't know, that's like That's kind of this area where the notches are on your phone. So this is it in landscape mode. This is really the only time you'd see it in a browser. When it's in a PWA, you see it a lot because there'll be like no URL bar. And a lot of websites don't really account for this. But if you don't account for it as a native app, Apple will just reject your app. So you're getting this like much more high quality website. And I mean, like, seriously, no one accounts for these things. And it's like a clean UI. And I was actually, yesterday I saw this. Google also doesn't account for this, so it just cuts off right there. So a lot can be done to make it better. And it is. So when you use Expo, you get all of this functionality by default. Maybe Google should use Expo. So, yeah. So let's talk a little bit, look under the hood. It's like a car reference. And we could talk about how it all works from a bundler perspective. So who here knows what a bundler is? Right? Okay, so like everyone. Who here knows how it works? Okay, nice. I'm going to put my hand down for that one. Essentially, the bundler is like the build step for your project, right? So it's going to take all the files, put them in like a bigger file, then it's going to remove the code it's not using, then it's going to transpile it, then it's going to minify it, and a bunch of other things, right? So there's a lot that can go wrong during that process. And I found the only thing more inconvenient than a bundler is two bundlers. Now, React Native uses the Metro bundler, like I said earlier. That's a Facebook bundler. Then the rest of the React community uses Webpack. I really like Webpack. So React Native for Web uses Webpack. You could technically run React Native for Web in the browser with Metro, but I'm going to stick to that one, right? So, what? Yeah. So Webpack does have its own set of difficulties. The first one being that it's just very difficult. Yeah, if you are if you're just trying to set up a basic React Native web project, the biggest thing I think that was halting it from really blowing up was the fact that you needed to do a lot of complex Webpack stuff. You needed to, if you have an app with a lot of iOS, Android web code, and you're building for web, you need to know how to remove all that iOS and Android code. And you need to alias things, and there's just a lot for even the most simple app. And then, if you want to use it with any of your favorite tools, like Next or Storybook or Gatsby, and why wouldn't you? They're awesome. Then you have to take their proprietary Webpack config and mix it with your proprietary Webpack config. So now you kind of just need to know everything about Webpack if you want to get going with React Native for Web in a real production capacity. Which is kind of why a lot of these bigger companies with engineers with lots of time use React Native for Web, and a lot of hobbyists don't. But all of that is now out of the way and gone with Expo because all these things are just supported by default. It's kind of just like making one Webpack config and then turning it into a library. And then adding Next support or Gatsby support it's as easy as setting up Electron support. You just download the adapter, and now you can build a Next website and reuse all the same components with your iOS and Android app and your desktop app. So you're getting almost 100% code reuse, everything outside of the navigation. And then with stuff like NARS, maybe in the future you can just SSR everything. So it just needed to be very easy, and that's why we set up the Webpack config. So now for the question on all of your guys' minds, and that is, can you build video games with it? And of course you can. I love video games. I made a lot of video games before I came to Expo. So you can play any of these in the browser. They're all using Expo for Web. I built all of these as native apps, and then once creating Expo Web, I was able to just run every single one of them. That one's actually running as a desktop PWA as well. And they're all super performant. I don't have enough time to play them, but you get the idea. So what's next? What do we have to do to make this even better? And the first thing, I think, is just navigation. That's the biggest open question right now. And that is because navigation is such a complex topic. And I mean, there's a whole talk dedicated to React navigation, which is the Expo navigation library. I recommend you check it out. It's by Satya. He works full-time on it. And in native, you've got lots of different paradigms for navigation. You've got the stack navigator where you push views on top of each other, and the tab where you switch between them. And with web, you've got built-in navigation. So you have to think of a nice middle ground for that. And then there's also things like shared element transitions, where one element transitions from one screen to another screen. And that's also very difficult. You can think of it like an image gallery when you open an image. But it's got anime and it looks cool, so I really want it. And now, Expo made native development for iOS and Android probably easier than it's ever been before. And now with the addition of web, Expo Web supports all modern browsers, by the way. You can render your app, your same code base, to all of these new targets. Extremely easy. And now with Electron support, and in the future desktop support with Catalyst and React Native Windows, you'll be able to build all these native website or desktop apps with the exact same code base as well. I mean, in the future, there's like, I guess, a few other ones that we could add. Just do it all. Why not? I mean, it's like if you have React Native Windows, that one comes by default, and that one comes by default, and tvOS is kind of already in there, but no one really uses it, so. And so anyways, guys, that is why I think that Expo, now with the addition of web and desktop and all these cool new things that we're working on, is the way that you can truly today write apps once and then run them anywhere. And that's all I got time for you guys today. If you enjoyed, sweet. If you guys enjoyed, feel free to follow me on Twitter at BaconBricks. I'll be tweeting out links to all the things I just showed, and then I, tweet things when I'm like alone at night making new features. So, yeah, that's all I got time for today.